Hi, thank you all for joining us. We are giving it a couple of seconds to let everyone file into the event, and then we'll get started. But please feel free to chat, say hello, introduce yourselves, because we would love to know who's watching.
I'm just going to say hi to the people I see out there. Ho-Chi, Jane, Teresa, Chris, Sarah.
Wait, Ho-Chi is here?
Oh, of course you know Ho-Chi. Everyone knows Ho-Chi.
Everybody knows Ho-Chi. Ho-Chi is such a gift to our community. This is so wonderful. Hi, Ho-Chi.
Now we all want to know Ho-Chi.
Yeah, everybody should know Ho-Chi.
I think that's probably giving people enough time to file in. And so hello, everyone, and welcome to another book chat at University Bookstore, part of our virtual Reading Aloud program, which you can check out on our YouTube channel. Today, we feature author-illustrator Julia Kuo in conversation with author Justina Chen for the book launch of Let's Do Everything and Nothing, Julia's gorgeous and dreamy new picture book, which I am just so in love with. My name is Grace, and I'm the events producer here at University Bookstore in Seattle, Washington, and I want to thank you all for joining us, and we would love to hear where you're zooming in from, so please let us know in the chat. University Bookstore is the oldest independent bookstore in the region, and we are celebrating our 122nd anniversary this year. So if you are in the neighborhood or passing through the neighborhood, be sure to stop in and say hello. And right now is the U District first annual Cherry Blossom Festival, so it is a great time to stop by. Speaking of stopping by, Julia will be stopping by our store tomorrow to sign your orders. So when you check out, using the link in chat to buy the book, please let us know if you'd like a personalized book or a special inscription, and we'll make that happen for you. Thank you for supporting our author event in a local indie bookstore. You can also download an activity kit based on the book on the event page, which will also be added to chat. You can read more about the book and our authors using the link in chat, so I will keep this intro brief so we can get to the good stuff, the book reading and discussion. Julia Kuo is a Taiwanese-American illustrator based out of Seattle. She has taught illustration courses at Columbia College, Chicago, and at her alma mater, Washington University in St. Louis. Julia was the visual arm of Chicago's 2017 March for Science and has had the honor of being an artist in residence at Banff Centre for the Arts and the recipient of a Gray Center Mellon Collaborative Fellowship at the University of Chicago. Please check out her other books, also available at U-Bookstore, including I'm an American and I Dream of Popo, and the links will be in chat soon. Moderating the discussion today, we are excited to have Justina Chen. Justina is an award-winning author of 6 books for young adults. Her debut novel, Nothing But the Truth and a Few White Lies, won the Asian Pacific American Award for Literature. And her most recent novel, Lovely, Dark, and Deep, earned a star review and book list. A few announcements before we get started. This event is being recorded for later playback on our YouTube channel. After the discussion, there'll be a chance for audience Q&A, so please put your questions in the Q&A field at the bottom of your Zoom screens at any time during their talk. And after the discussion, I'll hop back on to moderate those questions. And now here are Julia and Justina.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming.
Oh, it's so good to be here with everybody and to see everybody in the chat. So, Julia, I have been talking nonstop about your book, Let's Do Everything and Nothing. This book touched me so deeply. I think Grace was absolutely right. It's gorgeous, it's dreamy, and it's also lyrical and powerful and true, and such a great, perfect book that I think resonates in this moment in time where we haven't been able to do everything, and sometimes we've been forced to do nothing. And so, and for you to show us the joy in both the everything and the nothing, I was wondering if you might be able to share the book with us right now.
Yes, I would love to. Are we set up to do the reading? Awesome. Okay. Let's do Everything and Nothing by Julia Kuo. Yeah, we can probably start with the first page. Okay. Will you climb a hill with me? Dive into a lake with me. Read the starry sky with me. And watch the clouds parade. We'll scale the highest snowy peak. We'll gasp at creatures of the deep. We'll follow trails on summer nights. And salute majestic beasts. Will we reach the very top, the very bottom, the very end? We will. We'll share the quiet twilight hour. We'll find our path down step by step. We'll hold still as the ripples fade. And watch the shadows stretch. We'll rest. We'll doze. We'll be. We'll do everything and nothing. For being together is the best journey yet. To Albert for adventure, home, and everything in between.
Julia, that is just so exquisite. And I think that is the word to describe this book. Watch the clouds parade. Just as an author, can we just relish? Let's just relish those words and how beautiful the imagery plays with that. I am so curious about your inspiration for writing this book.
Yeah, okay, I can talk about all the different things that went in. So I think the story was really driven by my love and appreciation for companionship and kind of my ongoing search for contentment. So in 2019, I climbed Mount Rainier with my then boyfriend, and I wrote this story shortly afterwards. I loved the excitement and anticipation of planning and training for this incredible trip. But I was really surprised afterwards to find this like complete satisfaction in doing nothing and having kind of nothing left to train or plan for. So a lot of this was about my relationship with my now husband, whose do nothing personality really complements my everything, do everythingness. But I think there's a little bit more to it in that I know this book has been recommended for expectant mothers. And there's kind of a gem of truth in that the motherhood and parenthood is something that I'm thinking about and I'm like slowly deliberating about. And I think that this book kind of became this illustration of my hope for trying to find adventure in parenthood.
Absolutely. And I was just going to say, oh, I don't think it's just expectant mothers. I think this is going to be such an anthem for all mothers or all women who want to adventure with a child, whether it's a niece or a nephew, their best friend's kid, I use that word anthem very deliberately, because I do think that there is this anthem feel about taking your kid on an adventure, and yet also having the contentment of sometimes we just stay at home, and that's good too. One of the reasons why I think I love that interplay between companionship and contentment. In our family, we call it clumping. Like our companionship time, it's important that we clump. My kids and I are clumpers. I'm newly remarried, and my husband and his two daughters are not clumpers. And so blending a family, even teaching each other what companionship can look like, has been so interesting. I think it's really captured very well here in this book, because journeying together, in my mind, is part of the joy of life, right?
Oh, I love that. I love the new word that you've introduced into my vocabulary.
And sometimes you do need your individual time, right? Your alone time, but clumping time is so important. Yeah, so I love that. I also want to talk a little bit about having an Asian American mother in this book and featuring it. And again, it really spoke to me because I was in an unexpected divorce. And the first thing I did, I think you would laugh about this, I started saving my money because I wanted to take my kids on an epic adventure that they would remember, so that they would know they could still have an adventure with mom, And so when you wrote to see the creatures of the deep, that's really what I wanted to show them. So we went to the Galapagos. I mean, I saved, we did not go out to eat for like 2 years. We saved every penny, and then we got to go and see this. So let's talk about Asian Americans and the outdoors, because we had chatted, and you had a very distinct point of view about that.
Yeah. Okay. So things that I love about what you said, that you call the book an anthem, the clumping, and that you prioritize an outdoors trip like that. And like the Galapagos, I know how hard it is to get there. And I know the resources it takes because I've looked into it. And that is incredible. There's a reason why we're talking about this.
Exactly.
Okay. So I feel like, man, I don't know where to start. So I could talk about this from the mother's point of view, and also as Asian Americans. So maybe I'll talk about why I thought it was so important to use a mother and daughter.
Yes.
And then we can get more into Asian American identity. So there's a couple reasons. So many women learn about and they access the outdoors via men, often their partners. So as a climber, it's not uncommon to hear about other female climbers starting off because they were in a relationship with a man who taught them how to climb. But I would like to depict a world where women both provide and receive this valuable mentorship. And, this is an aspirational book for me. So many men continue to have these grand outdoor adventures after having kids, sometimes even newly into parenthood. And so again, perhaps aspirationally, I want to show mothers doing this. And lastly, I think the reason that I always draw women is because I'm terrible at drawing men. I always want to draw women and girls. Okay, so as for the Asian American part, there's so much that goes into this. I also put out I Dream of Purple and I'm an American in the past couple of years. And I'm really proud of these 3 books together almost as a set, because I think that they address Asian American identity in different ways. So for example, I Dream of Purple talks about these cultural identities and this common shared experience of long distance relationships maintained by immigrants. That's something that so many people, immigrants from different backgrounds, all experience. It's a universal story. I'm an American was about the historical legacy of birthright citizenship that so many Asian Americans directly benefit from. In fact, not just Asian Americans, any child of immigrants in the US benefits from. but there's this pride of owing it to a Chinese-American man. And
Mhm.
so Let's Do Everything and Nothing is a little bit different, right? It's a specific story. It does not speak for all of us, or even a broader Taiwanese-American or Asian-American group, right? Like in this book, a mother and daughter, they climb mountains, they dive, they swim with manta rays, definitely not widely shared experiences. But I think that there is this really important need to share stories that shed the need for cultural and ethnic identity, right? And this is something that I recently learned was called incidental representation. And
Mhm.
when I heard this term, it kind of clicked for me because I think it's something that I had thought about for a really long time, but didn't have a name for. So I think that incidental representation refers to showing groups of people who have historically been marginalized, typically people of color, in stories that don't explicitly address their culture or ethnicity. So a really great and longstanding example is Ezra Jack Keats' The Snowy Day. It kind of defied convention when Keats showed Peter, a Black boy, simply playing in the snow without having to explain himself. And what does this mean for Asian Americans? It used to be that Asians were only depicted in Western media by writers who weren't Asian. And so you had them simplified into these crude stereotypes, or they were written in as token Asians in ways that really minimized our complex, rich, and joyful lives. So, if I had to guess, I would say the first few Asian creators probably felt an enormous weight of representing like multiple identities and experiences. Like the idea of even Asian American is just such a huge, like vast, encompassing term. So I think it's a huge privilege to draw people who look like me into situations from my own lived experience without having to speak for an entire race. So I think that incidental representation allows us to get specific, to get into the nuances of like what one Taiwanese American story might be in contrast to another.
Mm-hmm. Okay, there's so much I want to unpack.
I want to unpack one off
here. I do want to say, put in a plug for that book, I Dream of Popo, but especially for me, I think I Am an American book that you illustrated alongside Martha Brockenbrough and Grace Lynn. That book is so important. It's a vital element, I think, of any library collection. I know I bought some copies and donated it to local school libraries just because it needs to be in our collections today, especially given the conversations that are happening in our in the political context today. So I just have to applaud you for that book as well.
Oh, it was Martha and Grace. So
well, you brought it to life. You brought it to life. And as we know, pictures are everything for a picture book. Can we step back before we talk about incidental representation and talk a little bit more about motherhood, okay, and specifically about this mother taking her child on these adventures? I am kind of curious from your point of view, like, how did you get into the outdoors? Okay. And then how did you build community there? And are you seeing more women bringing their kids along with them on these adventures?
Oh, I could talk about this all day. So I grew up in Southern California, and my dad was always pretty adventurous. So we would take these low budget trips out to the national parks, and we would camp in the Redwoods and Sequoia National Park, or just do these like long van trips around the Southwest.
We did the same thing.
I think every Asian family did it.
Yes.
Did you? So I think that we like learned to do like 8-hour road trips in the van with your snacks in the back.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. And like it definitely wasn't like we were doing any like huge feats of hiking. I remember just driving to the Grand Canyon, looking at it, being like, oh, it's very foggy today. And that's it. That's all I remember.
Yes.
So I think it was just like the access to it and being like, oh, I do think that camping is not specifically what everyone did, but even having that was kind of like a foot in the door. I almost think of it as like a generational, like, that's like something that gets passed down to you that not everyone has.
Right.
And so I think that was all I had. And I went through most of my life not really doing much more. I would visit and like do little hikes, but it wasn't until I was, I think, just turned 29 or no, just turned 30, and I hiked Half Dome with a bunch of friends. Someone had a permit for it and someone had experience. And Half Dome, I don't know if anyone is familiar with it. Are you, Justina?
Yes, I am familiar with it. Yes,
okay.
I'm just, even you talking of, you hiked it, you didn't climb it.
We did not climb it.
Okay, you hiked it. Okay.
We hiked it.
Okay. I do have to ask eventually whether you have climbed it, because I'm getting sweaty just thinking about it.
Me too. My hands are clammy.
Yes.
So Half Dome is like I can't remember exactly the mileage. It took us around 12 hours. It might have been 16 miles. And the most exciting part is that, so this is in Yosemite, and there's a famous feature called Half Dome that kind of looks like exactly that. And so people who climb it go up the straight side, and people who hike it go up the rounded side. And there's kind of this series of cables that you hold on to, and kind of little wooden things stuck into the rock that you can place your foot on, but I would not call them stairs or steps. And you have to like kind of haul your way up this thing. One thing that happens is lightning storms. So you don't want to be up there when that's happening. And actually, like, it was starting to drizzle when we were going up there. So that was something we were nervous about. But I had just started gym climbing right before then. And I realized I felt strong and I felt capable, and it was exhilarating. And I think this feeling, so I'm a smaller woman, I'm 5 feet tall. I'd never really had that identity for myself, and it was intoxicating. Like the idea of being like, I can handle myself, my body, and I can, I feel comfortable standing on this 45-degree slope. And so I think that kind of, that was right when I turned 30, and like ever since then, I kind of never looked back. And it did take me a while to learn how to go from indoor rock climbing to outdoor rock climbing. And I think that this is primarily due to the idea of mentorship outdoors, right? There's a steep learning curve, and the only way to learn it without having mentors is to pay your way through it. And not everyone has that ability. So I paid. I hired guides, I took classes. And eventually, sticking with it long enough, I found this incredible group of women, mostly from Cleveland and some from Chicago. And it is, when I sit on a climbing trip, when I sit around the dinner table with a group whose like median age is 43, like, it is incredible to me. It's so lucky. I think a lot of these women don't have like the traditional women's like trajectory, lifestyle, motherhood that you would think of. And there's a reason for that. But I find it so precious. So I feel like I've gotten lucky falling in with this group, and I can see how hard it is otherwise. I mean, it took me I've been climbing for maybe like 7 or 8 years now. And so it took a while.
Okay, there's again so much to unpack. We actually just need 5 hours with everybody. All right, so clear your afternoon, people. Okay, let's go back to that moment when our dads took us out to these national parks, because you're right. What I don't remember is doing epic hikes. I actually remember a lot of grumbling from the back seat. But what I think my dad, the biggest gift was actually teaching that sense of wonder.
Oh.
Right? The sense of wonder, like, whoa, our earth, we live on an earth that is this beautiful, right? And so when you map that wonder with that sense of exhilaration, that I'm actually strong enough, I can do this, that is magic.
It's so empowering.
Right? And I love the way you framed mentorship, right? Outdoor mentorship. When I turned, right after my unexpected divorce, my mentor, she was 70 years old at that time, Quaker woman. She marched in the civil rights, and she was like, the tall white woman, and but Quakers really, right? They have that sense of justice, but she was also this. She loved the outdoors, so she invited me on a walking trip through the Lake District in England, where we were walking 16 miles. And she's 70. She was 70. And we took this detour by accident. And so there we are climbing. And there she is, 70. You know, hands up, we're climbing. And we're like,
wow, I have so
supposed to
many
do this.
questions.
Right. But it's that sense of, okay. So in a way, it was a very much a let's do everything and nothing trip, because and to be there with somebody who was my mentor slash like pseudo mom, right?
Oh.
And at that age, and then she was filling me up saying, you're going to be okay. It's going to be
That's
fine
amazing.
being single, right? Isn't that remarkable?
It is.
Right.
And the idea that companionship, you did not lose companionship with a divorce or, a traditional partnering, right? You had it right there.
100%. And that's why I think this outdoor mentorship idea is so powerful. So here's to your women in Cleveland, and you said Chicago. Seriously, I think that is beautiful. And for us to be able to mentor other people and bring them along is so powerful.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it took me a while to realize that I could be that person. Oh, I was in a gym recently where someone younger than me saw me lead climbing, and it's something that I had to work up to. And she ran up to me and said, "Will you be my mentor?" And my gut, let me tell you what I said. I said, "Oh, I need a mentor." And I was like, "What are you talking about, Julia?"
Mm-hmm.
And I think that so many of us have more resources than we realize that we do.
100%.
Yeah.
And I think it's important for us to realize that mentorship goes up and down. It's to the younger people, but also the older people who have not had the experience of having that wonder and exhilaration.
Definitely.
Right. There was also, I loved when you said you're only 5 feet tall. In my head, because you and I have only spoken by phone, in my head, you are much taller than 5 feet tall.
It's funny you say that because I feel enormous. Like, I think I've never had that feel. Well, feeling strong was new, but I've always been a fairly confident person. And so I'm surprised when I realize how small I am. Like when I see a woman far away, I'm like, oh, she's small. And then she'll walk up to me and I'll be like, we're the same size. It's shocking.
Right. It's shocking. It's shocking. But I also want to talk about like the mentorship of even that. I remember one of my best friends after college, she went through the FBI boot camp, and she's 5'1".
Nice.
And she crushed all of the records. For me, that was empowering because I always thought small equals not as strong, but she smashed that stereotype right out of my head. And so I think that there is also, your book is doing so much work because it is smashing these stereotypes too of who gets to be in the outdoors.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Right.
Yeah. I think that there is still a lot of gatekeeping that's happening. And actually earlier, when we were chatting with Grace from University Bookstore, who introduced us all, we were talking about the idea of affinity groups, which are created to bring people into the outdoors, away from this traditional culture of mostly white male affluent people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that we just need to see it. We need to normalize it. We need to put it in children's books, so that not only the kids see it, but maybe the mothers too, for everyone who can look at it and see themselves as a mirror or even as a window to see people that you didn't expect to be in the outdoors.
And, when I go hiking in our area, I have to say, I always get a secret thrill when I see a person of color on the trail with me. It's just this like secret spurt of joy. It's like, oh, yes, somebody else on the trail. Do you get that too?
Oh, yeah. I always reserve a especially nice smile for them. I have like a nice polite smile and then like a real yes smile.
I absolutely love that. And The other thing that I was kind of reflecting on about the importance of your book, and you touched on it when you talked about incidental representation, but I want to tie it into the happiness research. So over the pandemic, I took the course by that Yale professor whose name I cannot remember, but she taught Yale's most popular class, and it is on happiness. And really, what are the sources of happiness? Do you know it's experiences? So what makes me sad about parenting today and childhood today, it's our screens. I love my phone, don't get me wrong. However, when you think about the things that fill people truly with joy, okay, and what stitches people together, it's the experiences. It is the lightning storm and being caught out. Now, all of you guys, when you're 80 years old, you'll be laughing about that. Do you remember that time? My husband and I were caught out in a lightning storm when we were in Zion, and we're up in the mountain, and it was scary, right? Because we're like, oh my gosh, are we gonna be able to get down? It's so slick. But to this day, we kind of giggle about it because it was a peak experience. It drew us together. It became a story that we tell and retell each other. It's a reminder of love and adventure and why we're together, and seeing him being completely unflappable. Meanwhile, I'm just like, I'm scared. We gotta hurry. And do you know what I mean? And so I think your book is also an invitation for people to experience truly happiness and creating those experiences that ultimately stitch us together.
Yeah, definitely. I think adventures, I know we've been talking about outdoors adventures, and that is what this book is specifically about, but I think there are so many out there in the world. And even with outdoors ones, there's, going for a lovely hike in the woods and like collecting like fall leaves of different colors. Like, I think that these adventures become this little microcosm of life. And I think that especially when things go a little wrong, like that's when they become all the more rewarding, when you get to see the range. And like that is a little slice of life, like getting upset and then figuring out and then calming down. That's it right there. And so I think that's why they're almost so addicting, is because when I do go on an adventure with someone, I get to see them in a rounder way, a fuller way than I would have if I just had, coffee's great, but it's so much more than that.
It is so much more than that. It is so much more. Can we talk a little bit about contentment, and then I do want to circle back to incidental representation, but that for me is like a big topic. So let's talk about contentment. It was interesting because in our previous conversation, you had talked about sometimes it's a struggle for you, right?
Oh yeah.
Contentment of now. Can you talk a little bit more about that? And then how did you get to that point of being able to write the end of let's do everything and get to the nothing part and find contentment in the nothing part?
Since writing this, now that I'm an author, I talk with other authors or author illustrators about how they came up with their books. And it seems to be a running theme that authors write about things that they don't have, or things that they struggle with, or really just neuroses. And then so I am no exception to that rule. And I think that I really chase these experiences in search of contentment, because it's so hard for me to find. And I think it has to do with probably being just an ambitious person. Like in a darker light, I might call it a greedy person. I just want more. And I know there's more out there in so many different facets of life, not just in play, but in career, and in different types of fulfillment. And I think that's shaped who I am. And I've dealt with that. And so that's what makes me appreciate those who do have it. And I marvel at them. So for example, when this book first came out, I remember someone writing a post with a prompt, what is your favorite ways to spend time? What is one of your favorite ways to spend time with a loved one? And people's responses were things like coffee weekend getaways, finding new shows to watch. I think they said looking for rocks and shells at the beach. And someone said being in the same room as someone. So that is not how I operate. Like, I am not content when I'm just in a room with someone, but I admire it and I even envy it. I envy this ability to find contentment at home. The way I find contentment is like struggling up a bitterly cold, snowy landscape at midnight with someone. So I think, this book explores that, and it's almost a wish, right? Like, I wish that I would go home and be happy and settled, and that I could just stay home and feel that way. And I marvel at those who can, because I kind of think it's a gift.
It is a gift. It really is a gift, that contentment. And actually, thank you, Jane. Is that your Jane Kuo? Laurie Santos is the happiness professor. And part of her study is learning to be content. Actually learning to be content.
Oh, so I should take this class.
It is so mind-blowing in big and small ways. But I kind of wanted to, if you don't mind me reframing the word greedy, I think of it as less greedy than taking a big bite of life. Taking a big bite of life. But life is made up of everything and nothing. It is companionship and solitude, right? It is also, there's beauty. And maybe it's because I'm older, and learning to find the beauty in the stillness of the moment, and back to the beginning when I said we're blending an everything and a nothing family together. And so what my husband and I have found is that it's easier for us to find our rhythm in doing everything when it's the two of us. And when we have my two new daughters, it's easier to do nothing, because that's
noted.
Like their love language, right?
Yeah,
and so it could be, but exploring a new show with them, right?
Right.
So the stillness of that and just being okay, good with that.
Right. Taking notes.
Taking notes. I know, because if you have a nothing child, this will be a true difference in your life.
I mean, like, I feel like karma, how could I not? That's what's going to happen.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about the incidental representation piece. When you talked about that, it just completely blew my mind open to frame and reframe the world for me. Okay, so let's talk about that in your life, because being an Asian climber, that still is a fragment, I would say, of the climbing community, right? But then how you use that experience, your lived experience, to kind of shape the way you want to create your work.
Oh, well, okay. I guess where do I even start? Some people work off of, I think, negative motivation, where they work hard, they spend their time working on avoiding things that they don't like, and like shaping their lives to avoid those. And I think I'm very much the opposite, where I'm very positively motivated. And so I just want to talk about the things that make me happy and that bring me joy. And so if I have this hobby outside of my career that gives me so much, it feels only natural to bring it into my work. Also, I think that, when I first started out just thinking about a career in art, fine art is something I considered as opposed to commercial art. And I found that I didn't have that much to say. I didn't have my personal things that I really wanted to get across to the world. And so going into commercial art made a lot of sense, because I love problem solving. Like, I like figuring out a visual problem. I love editorial assignments where I'm given content and I want to figure out how to best communicate that visually. It's so fulfilling. But as time has gone on and I've had my own experiences in my own life and things that hurt, when I went into rural America, as I often do to go climbing, and was the only person of color, or around 2016 when I was in Alaska traveling around right before the election, I think that I've felt a lot of things that hurt me as far as how I look in this country and how people perceive me. And I think that will and always now inherently be a part of how I process the world and what I want to say. And so I think that being a Taiwanese-American climber sometimes feels inherently subversive, like acting and looking like I belong here as much as I can, that I have authority in my activity and what I'm doing here, that there is no doubt that I have an ownership over what is happening at the moment. Like that empowers me. And so if I'm going to write children's books, so this is my first children's book I've ever written. I don't know if, there will be one more actually, but after that, I don't know if there will be any more. Like I don't take it for granted. So if I only get a couple chances to write these stories for kids to read and for their mothers and their fathers to read too, what am I going to write about? And I think that that's started to shape like, okay, I have a few stories that I can tell. They're going to be about people going outside and like what that can give to their life, what meaning that can bring when you're in the outdoors with those that you love. But it also is going to talk about belonging there through whatever activity it is. And so in mine, it's climbing.
I love that word belonging. And I think what a gift to the world it will be for your future books to always have that element of belonging. I do want to give a shout out to someone in our audience. We talked about outdoor mentorship, but I think equally important is the notion of creative mentorship. And when I first started publishing, there really were not that many Asian American authors, much less Taiwanese American authors. So Ho-Chi, he is a creative mentor who has created community, who has really elevated people who are in the creative profession in our Taiwanese American community. I feel such great debt to him and other people like that who are creating the sense of belonging and kind of and elevating our work so people can find it. And so thank you out there, Ho-Chi. Really, thank you so much.
And he's still working on it right now. I can say as a fact that he's like trying to get together more Taiwanese American authors as we speak.
Right, and basically creating space for us in a community where there weren't many of us in the first place. And so I just think that is beautiful, and that type of mentorship is so very powerful. Before we kick over to questions, I do want to hear what's next. What other books of yours do we get the privilege of collecting?
Well, okay, so I'm super excited to say that there are a couple books in the pipeline. One is coming out this fall, and it's called Luminous, Living Things That Light Up the Night. So that's a book that I wrote and illustrated through Greystone Books, which, if you don't know, this publisher it's a Canadian publisher, and it makes absolutely gorgeous books. One of it, if there's one I'm just going to shout out called War, especially in this time right now with Ukraine. It is a children's book that talks about war in a very poetic and wordless way. So just putting that out there. But my book is about bioluminescence and my own adventures. So I went with my family to New Zealand and looked at glowworm caves in Tianu.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's on my list.
Right.
Yes.
And did you know that glowworms, the part that like glows is not the worm, it's like these sticky threads that they send down that to catch lure insects, and that glows. So fascinating, creepy.
Fascinating.
So that's one, and other bioluminescent experiences. Another one is a book that I'm illustrating for someone named Kate Messner, who is this very like amazing writer. She did the Over and Under series, which is a nonfiction picture book series that I absolutely love. It talks about different outdoors places, over under the pond, over and under the rainforest. So the book I'm doing for her is called The Next Scientist, and it's technically a sequel to The Next President, both of which take these really austere professions and they make them accessible for kids. So, you know, all of these amazing scientists and presidents were once kids that tinker. They were once kids that made messes, and things like that. And then the last one is one that just got sold. It's my next book that I wrote and illustrated, and it was sold to Connie at Roaring Brook, who did this book.
Connie!
And this book is called Home is a Wish, and it's about displacement. And I was thinking about this book this winter, or I wrote it this winter when I was settling into Seattle. I was missing my parents in Taiwan, and just thinking about how people who move often, you know, and who have homes in different places, there's often this feeling of bittersweet. Like, you know, you find new homes and new relationships and you love them, but you will never forget the old homes. So I'm excited about that one.
Well, I am excited about that one. And I'm so excited about your partnership with Connie, your editor, who is so talented.
Yeah, I'm pretty lucky.
Yeah, her brain is something to behold.
Yeah, I think that I would love to go to an exhibition of books put out by Connie someday.
Yes, 100%. 100%. I think we are ready then to take some questions.
Thank you, Julia and Justina, for that wonderful discussion. I could literally listen to you speak about this all day. So we need to have you both back again soon. And thank you, Julia, for writing this beautiful book that helps promote diversity in the outdoors. As we all chatted before the event, that subject's also very important to me and the basis of a lot of the work I do with the Seattle Audubon. And one of the things that we've been working on in that organization is realizing also that that first important, crucial step towards improving and increasing diversity is to show representation. Because simply by showing people of color in those spaces that they were minorities in for so long, and people do not even, you know, really think that people of color appreciate and love and enjoy the outdoors as much. But just changing that narrative is the first step, and also to make people feel more inclusive, because if you're not represented somewhere, you do not feel comfortable joining that place. So this book is really going to help with that, and also starting from, you know, a young age to make it normal for young people of color to see that and see that representation. So thank you again for writing that. And I have a question for both of you to get started, and then we'll move on to some audience questions. So as women of color who love exploring the outdoors, from your own experience, I don't know if you've had experience with large organizations or even felt uncomfortable joining large organizations that work in the outdoors, but what are some of the ways that you think that those large conservation and outdoor organizations could have become more inclusive and help foster a sense of belonging for people of color who either want to join, or when they do join, feel like they belong there and feel represented?
Okay, I can go first. I mean, there's so many ways, but one, you know, I think something that is happening is courses being set aside for BIPOC people, right? So that these are safe feeling places where you are among people who look like you, and may experience the world a little bit more similarly. But I do think that this needs to be followed up with some scholarship opportunities, because adventuring in outdoors is not cheap. If we're talking about, you know, the Audubon Society, what about binoculars, right? Like I took some naturalist courses where I did have like a birding component, and the person who taught it had like 20 binoculars that were like of different fanciness levels. And I think that would be really intimidating to me. And that's a form of gatekeeping, is when things are really expensive, the tool that you need to fit in. And this even goes to like brands of clothing, like what people wear. And so I think kind of making that accessible financially is a large part. Another part is questioning what it looks like to belong in the outdoors. So what does it look like if a group of Southeast Asians has a picnic on a hike? What does it smell like? And is that okay? What about creating like helmets for people who are, for Black people? And like, I don't know if you've ever seen that helmets only fit on your head if you can like squish it close, squish your hair completely. And it's literally not unsafe if it doesn't sit that close to your head. So I think that there's so many different ways that we could tackle this. I could probably talk forever, so I'll stop.
Well,
And then
maybe we'll have you back to talk forever about that. I think that would be great. Justina?
Oh, I was just going to add on, and it also comes down to, are we being represented on simple things like the website? Who's on the website, right? In the clothing companies, who's in the catalog, right?
I've definitely been overrepresented on social media of places that I've participated in, and that's very interesting too.
So interesting.
I know there's so much, I think, this narrative that does need to be changed. It'll take a long time, but what I'm really, really loving to see is how many people want to participate in this conversation and how many people have joined in and are letting their voices be heard and feel comfortable enough to be welcomed into those spaces and let their voices be heard. So this book is definitely one that I'm going to recommend to everybody in my the Equity and Justice group at the Audubon, and also to the rest of the staff, because it really does help promote something on such a level where it's just, this is normal, this is beautiful, this is just full of joy, and there's nothing else that you need to think about it other than the outdoors is for everybody. So thank you. So let's move on to some audience questions. We've got quite a few. Are any particular moments of the story inspired by your own childhood?
I think that the ones where the mother and her child are at home, that's like they're in a Taiwanese-American home. It's not, and this is part of the incidental representation, but that kind of looks like a more tidied up version of my kitchen, maybe a more modern and tidied up version, but there's like tea canisters, there's always like the rice cooker, there's the cleaver or the knives of different sizes, there's the wok that I leave sitting out on my stove because it's usually out. You know, so, and then even like the lazing around spread where the mom and her child are sitting there, they drink tea with oranges, and then they eat shrimp chips as they're practicing their bopomofo. So it's just, you know, this is what it looks like to be at home for me. So it makes sense to draw it.
Thank you. And thank you for sharing how this book came to be, Julia. I'd love to know if you shared this wonderful book with your own mother, and if so, how did she respond to it and interpret the story? Thank you for being here with us today. And that's from Olivia from New York.
So I actually don't think they saw it until just a couple of days ago. And my parents who live in Taiwan sent me a picture of my mom holding the book. She looks happy. And here's the text. I bet one day you will take your daughter everywhere for all kinds of adventure, just like the mother in this book. And, you know, they really want grandkids. So there's kind of a couple layers there.
And Jane asked if there are any more author and illustrator books in the works, which I know Justina asked already, but is there anything else that you want to share, any projects, even if it's like going on a vacation or plans to do nothing?
Oh, okay. So, you know, we're coming off a 2-week road trip, which is definitely not doing nothing. And then I am climbing another mountain in the summer. And then maybe after that, I'll do nothing. After a bunch of things.
So Claire asks, have you experienced all the adventures or challenges that you portray in the book? And are there any not in the book that you hope to try in the future?
Okay, so I have not learned how to scuba dive, and I'm kind of afraid of doing deeper sea things. So no, I haven't done those like watery things. Although I have started to, in my adult life, I started to swim in lakes thanks to some friends who are who helped me get over that fear. But I would say that the one adventure I haven't experienced yet in this book is motherhood.
And Claire says, this is from John. How did authoring the book yourself affect your illustrative approach compared to something you didn't write?
Okay, that's
Great
a really,
question.
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's so different, and I didn't expect it to be so different. So obviously there's more creative control, right? You know, like you can write and illustrate the story as you want. But so as someone who usually illustrates them, when you illustrate them, you're hired into the editorial pipeline. And they expect you and trust you to find the artistic vision. Once you're on, you're hired. Right? But that's not how it works for writing and illustrating your own book. So with this process, you have to sell both the art and the text from the very beginning. So you have to figure out the entire artistic vision as you're figuring out the text, and you put that together into a dummy to show your agent who pitches it to editors. And so in this way, there's a lot more upfront work and uncertainty. You have to figure it all out and kind of make the blueprint for it before it even becomes real. So, you know, that seems to be the payoff for having more creative control over the entire story. But one last thing that I found that is kind of lonely to be an author illustrator. So, you know, the books that I've done, I've loved so much. I've loved being paired with those authors. They write stories that I could have never come up with in a million years. And I think that's another thing that I've learned, is that my creative freedom as an author and illustrator is limited. It's limited to what I can do. And I know that I can't do that much. So I kind of miss having like this partner in crime, which, because I would always prefer to have a companion, which kind of gets us back to the idea of this book to begin with.
Thank you. And this is from Joyce. Hi, Julia. As a mother, I found your illustrations to be so exhilarating and so intimate at the same time. It's so realistic to my experience as a mom. I'm curious how you selected the depictions of the mother and child. They are just so on point.
Well, I'm glad you think so. Okay, so I guess I could answer this in two different ways. And the fun part is that in the beginning, I wanted the mom to be showing the daughter these adventures. So in the first 4 pages, I think the mom is on the right side leading you through the book. And then as the adventures get wilder, they actually switch spots. So the girl is on the right side leading the mom through the crazier adventures. And that was my wish of like, I will teach my daughter and then she will teach me.
Oh my goodness, Julia, you just blew my mind. I have to reread everything based on that now. And in fact, after the event ends, stick around everyone, because we're going to invite Julia to do another reading of the book. That way we can look at it again through the lens of this discussion, because now I'm going to be paying attention to where they're standing. Mm-hmm. So that's really cool.
I did use a lot of reference though. So like shout out to the people who helped. Like I put out on call on Facebook. I was like, does anyone have daughters between this age that they would love to show photos of? And so many people were willing to share photos. So that was super, super helpful.
Beautiful. So it's like a community work.
It is.
Yeah. Sarah asks if you can talk a little bit about the book's beautiful color palette. Everyone at the store, I have to tell you, we're just like, this is the most beautiful, stunning, like modern, fresh. It's just gorgeous. It's like one of the best picture books that I've seen in a very long time.
Oh,
so. So can you talk a little bit about the color palette you chose?
Absolutely. So, okay, I wanted to tell this story through color. Like I wanted the mood to shift and the scene as the scenes change. And so, you know, we start out with these like purplish blues that go to royal blues, and then they get vibrant, and then it transitions to reds and pinks before yellows. And this is a nerdy art school thing where traditionally reds and yellows activate an image while blues and greens cool it. You can think of hunger and fast food chains where you're just hit with bright reds and yellows. So I wanted to flip this on its head, because my personal association with excitement is the blues of pre-dawn hiking starts, of alpine lakes, of bluebird skies. And when I think about the comfort of home, I think of like the glow of warm lighting, whether it's the flickering of a fireplace, or, you know, when you're driving home late at night and all the windows are lit up in your neighborhood, like that beautiful warm glow. That's what I think of, or even sunlight filtering through colored drapes. So I really kind of enjoyed doing this like very nerdy art thing where I where I kind of switched it around.
And it works so beautifully. In fact, Joyce in the chat just said that you've inspired their next few months of nail color. So that is quite a great review for the book, don't you think?
I love that so much.
I just want the t-shirt. I want the t-shirt. Let's do everything and nothing in that blue with the orange.
We can make
Oh,
that
I
happen.
know.
Okay.
Please,
Yeah.
please.
Yes.
We need merch.
Yeah, we
is
need
awesome.
merch.
Yeah. Speaking of which, I forgot to mention this earlier, but all books purchased through your bookstore will come with this absolutely gorgeous art print that you can frame and put up in your home. So look forward to that as well. And this is from Claire. There's a red sign hanging in the window of their home towards the end of the book. What is the meaning?
Okay, so it's a red sign that has one Chinese character on it, and that character is Chun, which is spring. And it's actually upside down because in Chinese, it's a play on words. When you flip something down, that word of down is dao. And there's one that sounds like it. It's a homonym that means has arrived. So it's saying spring is arrived. So this is typically something you'll see on some Chinese houses when they're celebrating maybe Lunar New Year and like we're waiting for the welcome of spring.
Thank you. And here's our final audience question, and then we will move on to the reading to close out the event. So this is a question from Kathleen, but echoes exactly what I have been wanting to ask you both since you started talking. I love this dynamic of Julia's and Justina's conversation. Have the two of you thought of working on a book together?
Okay.
And if not, do it now.
Okay, so when I was looking for someone to moderate this panel, I was like, I need to find someone who understands what it means to be Asian American, a mother, understands the outdoors and knows the publishing world, you know, and there are not that many people who do that. And then here's Justina, like, it is incredible to connect on all of these different levels. And I would love to write a book with you.
Oh my gosh, it would be a dream. And that was from Kathleen. Do you know Kathleen March? She is a gem of a bookseller in Chicago.
Oh.
So when you go on your book tour, when things
I am going to Chicago in like 1.5 weeks.
Kathleen is the woman to know.
All right, I will find you, Kathleen.
So thank you both of you for that really wonderful discussion and for sharing so much of both of yourselves with us today. Thank you for our audience for joining us and for those amazing questions as well. So you can purchase copies of both authors' books using the links in the chat. And Julia will be signing books for us tomorrow. So please let us know in the checkout if you want a personalized copy or an inscribed copy. And so after that, let's close the event with another reading of the book, which I know is just going to put us in the most wonderful, joyful mood for the rest of today. Thank you, Julia and Justina, for this wonderful, wonderful time together.
Thank you too. This almost feels like we're wrapping up with bedtime. So I will put you all to sleep with this reading.
So we have to give Miyako a few minutes to just get it loaded up, I think, again.
All right. Will you climb a hill with me? Dive into a lake with me. Read the starry sky with me. And watch the clouds parade. We'll scale the highest snowy peak. We'll gasp at creatures of the deep. We'll follow trails on summer nights and salute majestic beasts. Will we reach the very top, the very bottom, the very end? We will. We'll share the quiet twilight hour. We'll find our path down step by step. We'll hold still as the ripples fade and watch the shadows stretch. We'll rest, we'll doze, we'll be. We'll do everything and nothing. For being together is the best journey yet. So thank you so much for being here, everyone, for giving a little bit of your time today.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Julia and Justina, again.
All right, bye-bye.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day.